This is the Rising Stars Show with Rex Wallace.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Rising Stars. We're flying solo today. Our co-pilot Mick is not here today, but shout out to Hyperlift and please pay them a visit for all your stars dashboarding needs. They do an incredible job for many of my clients. Our topic today is the 2022 Medicare OEP, the open enrollment period, and the rapid disenrollment, and all of the factors that come with that really important period. And the backdrop of this conversation is going to be a fascinating study that just came out from DEFT Research called the 2022 Medicare OEP and Disenrollment Study. And with that, I'll go ahead and bring on our guests. So we have the Executive VP from DEFT Research and the face and voice of all things shopping and switching in Medicare, George Dipple. Welcome, George.
Thank you, Rex.
And then we have the Vice President of Medicare Advantage from Johns Hopkins Healthcare, Maria Wilson. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you.
So George, didn't mean to embarrass you there, but really, like you've been doing this for a minute, right? And you do such a great job. DEF does such a great job, and I think in this report that just came out, I've gotten to see it, and a lot of my clients use you, and some of them even invite me into the presentations when you come join them and walk through the whole report. And this is just one of your many reports, but this one's really insightful, and I'm going to actually start with you. And I guess maybe first off, just can you kind of tee up this report, talk about what your objective was here, and have you done this one before, or is this a brand new study this year?
Yeah, good questions there, Rex. So we have done this report since the OEP was reinstituted in 2019, and dinosaurs like me, we remember a time where there is an OEP now. We remember a time when there was an OEP, and then we remember a time when there was an OEP. So it has come and gone, but since it came back, that's when we started to look into it, because our thinking at DEFT is, we put so much emphasis and so much time and money into the AEP, but you really can't just look at the AEP as the final say, right? To us, the final chapter of the AEP is how things shake out in the OEP. And all those members that you brought in the front door, are you able to hold on to them, or do you see breakage? And that's the purpose of this study, is to really say that the emphasis that we put into that magical period at the end of the year, are we doing everything that we need to do, not just to bring those folks in, but to lock them up, and hopefully lock them up not just for the OEP, but so that when we get ready for the next AEP, we now have loyal members, great lifetime value trajectories, good ROI. That's the whole purpose.
Yeah, it gives such great insights, and as we just kind of came out of OEP recently, right? And obviously the timing of the study, and but it's never too early to prepare for the next one, right? Because it is such a pivotal period, but and it's sort of its own thing, but it's sort of an extension, and I'm curious, Maria, from the plan perspective, how do plans approach OEP? How do you plan for it? And even in the bid strategy, when you're focused on AEP, is OEP a topic in there? And just how do you approach OEP?
I think, George is absolutely correct. There is so much emphasis on AEP and preparing for the AEP, but how I think about AEP versus OEP is AEP is very externally facing. You worry about your competition, you look at the changes in the marketplace and prepare for the growth. What in considering OEP, you end up doing more internal look to how do you retain the members? How do you retain the members that you have? And how do you retain the members that you gain during AEP? So it's critical that the health plan focus both AEP and OEP. I think the same tools help in AEP as well as OEP, but in looking at both of them, you expand your focus in terms of how do you prepare. So how do you prepare? It's a year-round process to help members to stay happy, and be satisfied with the benefits, understanding the benefits as they navigate throughout the year. But specifically in preparing to the OEP, it is the same focus as in AEP. How do you communicate about the changes that are happening the coming year? How do you communicate about those changes to your existing members, as well as how do you prepare your sales team and your marketing materials for the new members that are enrolling in? So you do need to look at that continuum. I think you, Rex, mentioned that it truly is a continuum of the AEP. So
Yeah.
same process.
And I think, and George, you mentioned that it was here in the past. It went away for a minute, and then it came back. And if as I've always understood it, it was at least originally designed to be a safety net, right, for members who, but because it doesn't apply to members who are in traditional Medicare. It only applies to Medicare Advantage members, right? So if you're in traditional Medicare, at least back in the day, and you wanted to try Medicare Advantage, but mid-January or February, you realize this is not for me. I really miss the warm embrace of traditional Medicare. You had that safety net to fall back on, and now it feels like it's become so. It's still just for Medicare Advantage plans, but it's all about switching now. It feels like, because so many members are in Medicare, and it's not just. I guess it is like rapid disenrollment for the new members, but it's also, and Mario, you just touched on this, the current members who are staying with us, who have plan changes, who maybe we don't. It puts pressure on us to communicate really, really well, right? Those plan changes, so they do understand them. And by the way, the CAP survey is coming, in near the end of OEP too, so it's all interrelated. And since this is called Rising Stars, I do want to touch on stars, because this is kind of a unique year. So the 5-star surge in plans, right? So many, many, many more plans hit 5 stars than ever before. And George, I know you have some information on this in your in your study, but curious both of your perspectives here. And George, we can start with you on what did you see as far as the impact of this surge in 5-star plans? Did it cause more people to shop or switch in OEP, maybe with all the marketing happening with those 5-star plans?
Great question, Rex. I think it definitely contributed to the overall level of noise and interest in the January through March period. When we look at the data, historically, you just didn't see a ton of activity in the OEP. The first 3 years that it came back, we had about 11% of seniors did something. And by did something, they could have changed plans. They could have looked into new plans and just shopped. But it was a relatively light period. And, if you think about folks coming out of the AEP, you had all that marketing, all the TV ads, all the mail, all the calls, everyone's whooped. So there isn't a ton of interest to open things back up again unless something is really wrong. And I would say that was kind of the theme of the OEP for the first 3 years. Now this year, I look at it as a blending of the two periods. The line is blurring between AEP and OEP, because you see a lot of the same third-party marketing organization television ads. The famous Joe Namath ads, things like that. They run in the AEP for lead gen. They run in the OEP. But this year, you also had branded ads, more branded ads in Q1. And between those two elements, the fact that plans are richer, as you mentioned, you have more than double the amount of 5-star plans. You really had both the unbranded lead gen, you had the branded lead gen, and it's really hard to differentiate the two periods. So we went from, like I said, barely much activity, 11%, to this year, 22%, a doubling of consumers paid attention. And that doubling is about half of what you see for the AEP. So the AEP is everything that we plan on, but you have half as many consumers paying attention to the OEP. And our position is it's growing in importance. We might see a little bit of reduction in the 5-star plans next year. I know, the better of element that you guys speak of. But we're still going to have more of those. We're still going to have more of those, right? We have 65% of all U.S. counties have a 5-star plan in it today. Just think about that. It was 25% 3 years ago. So you have more activity, more branded, more unbranded marketing, more seniors are paying attention, and to us, that means as an industry, we have to pay more attention to it. I think we got lulled to sleep the first few years. We saw fewer and fewer folks switch plans in the OEP who had switched plans in the AP, and then this year that number shot up. We saw in that study 27% of consumers who picked a new plan in the AEP made some sort of a change in Q1, and that's high. And you think of all the effort that goes in to bring those folks in, we can't have a quarter of those consumers not just looking, but making some sort of a plan change.
But before I pivot to Mario, one more kind of follow up question on that. Because we had a whole episode on here about the 5-star special election period this year at SEP, which because of that number of 5-star plans being so enormous this year, we think it is going to be a materially different experience for plans this year from a lapse standpoint, from a switching standpoint, because it's so easy to change because everyone has access to a 5-star plan, and if you didn't make a change in OEP, you can still make a change. But do you at Deft do you guys have a thought on that as far as after OEP getting into lock-in? Do you think we're going to see a lot more switching from a 5-star perspective?
Generally, what we see is that there have to be reasons why consumers decide, oh, I'm going to look into Medicare. Most seniors don't want to fiddle with this. Once you buy a plan, your idea is, I'd like this plan to stay with me for life. Does that happen? No. But that's kind of the baseline hope of seniors. A lot of times what will happen too with seniors is something will change materially with their health during the course of the year. A new medication is prescribed, okay? And this medication may not have been something that was in my consideration set when I was deciding last fall, am I in the right plan? Or a new diagnosis, new specialist, new physician care. So yeah, in that sense, when something changes materially with health, I think you're going to see those consumers say, it's better to look now in May or June than to wait, let's say, until November or December. So you could see some of that. But I think probably a lot of the disenrollment that we saw and the jostling for position probably was Q1. If something is really wrong with the plan, if I didn't understand my plan changes, if I didn't understand that there was a network change, seniors figure that out really quickly in the new year. Mm-hmm. We have a stat in that study, 85% of seniors had some utilization in the first quarter, and most of those folks had some utilization in January. So it doesn't take long to figure out if you're in the wrong plan. So I do think, yeah, you will see some movement into 5-star plans during the lock-in period. I think more of that are going to be consumers who had a material health change, and that was the wake-up call, the epiphany that I need to look for different coverage.
Mario, from the plan perspective, the 5-star surge, and I'm not even maybe I'm not sure how many 5-star plans you have in your market, so how big of an issue this is for you personally, but just in general, did this surge in 5-star plans influence strategy within health plans as far as OEP and lock-in strategy?
I think it probably depends on the market. Specifically in our market, it wasn't a big factor. I think the same considerations that you would give just OEP in general applies to that. So if the health plan feels vulnerable in that market, they probably did consider it differently. I think as a health plan, I would look into the population that you have, especially the new members that self-enrolled, and reach out to them first to just make sure that they are happy. So it's more of those vulnerabilities that we want to worry about than whether there are 5-star plans or not. Yes, there is the benefit that they can promote their products throughout the year, and there is value in that for them. But from health plans perspective, I think the focus needs to be in how to retain the members. Are they a happy member? What can you do to ensure that the beneficiaries are happy? And the first impression does matter. It is whether it's through the pharmacy, whether it's your authorization process, all those, or just the changes that you make to the benefit, or communicated the changes to the benefit that truly matter. What I found really interesting in the study that DEFT did is the that even who initiates the first interaction matters. So welcome calls, not just to your new members, well, obviously to your new members in this situation, but also welcome calls to your existing members, those members that could be vulnerable, and your analysis shows that they have had experiences in the prior year that could initiate the shift. All those are that's the sort of vulnerable population that you have to worry about year round, whether you have 5-star plans around or not. Because if they don't leave during the year, they likely will leave the following AEP if they've had a bad experience.
And if I could just speak to that, because I think
Yeah.
that's a great point that you made from that study. It really isn't just do you have open lines of communication, new member with new health plan, but to your point, who initiates that? We did see when the health plan is seen or perceived as initiating that first outreach, those are consumers. Not only do they not switch in the OEP, but they really didn't even give it consideration. But consumers who feel as though I have to make the first outreach, something might be wrong, or I don't understand my plan, or how do I find a physician, things of that nature, that's already a sign of a consumer who might not feel empowered to use their new benefit, but might feel more abandoned. And we look at the differential between empowerment and abandonment with consumers and basically say that is what determines long-term loyalty or short-term attrition. Do I see you as my carrier empowering me to use this Medicare entitlement I value, I've worked my whole life for, or do I feel like I just was sold a plan and that's it? And so your point there where you make the outreach first and foremost, that is putting your best foot forward. We actually, in that study, we look at different segments of consumers. And we have a segment of consumers that we termed loyal and happy. They're thrilled. They love their new plan. They're not going anywhere. They ought to be members for quite some time. And those folks, the majority said, yes, my plan reached out to me first. I feel because of that I understand my coverage. And I credit my plan with helping me understand my coverage. And those are three really important elements that we see builds when you have a more loyal member. And also in that study, we have the opposite. We have people that are on the way out in the OEP, or people who might be on the way out in the AEP, and their experiences were different. I reached out first. I don't clearly understand my coverage, and I don't think you've done a bang-up job of helping me understand my coverage. And it really is as simple as that when it comes to setting folks up to not quit in the first 90 days.
Yeah, it's one of those nuggets of wisdom, right? That came out of the study for me definitely, and for Maria too. It sounds like, and there were a lot in there, and I'll just say I don't know how you compete in this market today if you don't have information like this, right? So, I'm having a hard time imagining there are plans out there who don't buy these studies, but I know there are, so I'm sure. So, but seriously, like it's it's the insight. I mean, intuitively, that makes perfect sense, right? Like who initiates the outreach, and when you really think about it. But I've never seen that in a study or seen that spelled out as an observation. So, it is actionable, and it is. I mean, I have a lot of clients who, strive to make a welcome call within the first 30 days of enrollment. During AEP, which, based on that definition, means the member it gets a call by the end of January. But if something comes up in mid-January or the third week in January, and they have a need, and they feel confused, and like I've been in this plan for 3 weeks and nobody's really told me what to expect yet, that's a problem. And now we have this data that actually says they're much more likely to switch plans if we don't reach out to them first. And I think understanding your members, and Mario, you were kind of alluding to this, like really understanding your members and maybe knowing who to prioritize, right? Based on their characteristics that we do know at point of enrollment, and moving them at least to the top of the queue. And I know a big movement also is conducting outreach before the effective date, right? Especially during AEP when a member can enroll as soon as October 15th, the pre-effective outreach. So at least starting those touch points, on day zero, maybe as soon as they enroll before they're effective, because there might be 45 days before they're effective, right? And that's a long time to just kind of sit and wait. And by the way, they can they can switch many other times in that up until December 7th, right? And this the last plan standing, the last one that gets their attention is the one that really gets the enrollment. But you guys have thoughts on that?
Yeah, Rex, I think you are so right in terms of reaching out to the existing members even before AEP. The health plan has the data. They know which members are impacted either positively or negatively by the changes that are coming for the following year. And it's critical to be transparent if it has even when it has a negative impact to the member and explain and help them um, to deal with that change, or vice versa. If you are improving the benefit and it hits some of the grievances that the beneficiary
Mm-hmm.
might have had throughout the year, um, reach out, communicate and let them know that that's coming, because it's almost well, it's very challenging for the beneficiaries to read through everything and understand all the changes. So there is tremendous opportunity to address it all proactively.
And if I could just touch on that as well, Rex, I thought it was another interesting point in that study. Um, it isn't just right outreach and being the first party to extend an olive branch to a new member, but it's also looking at when those new members enroll. All right, so new members that came in the AEP, we did see in that study, folks who came in the final week, those folks had the greatest likelihood of leaving in the OEP, two times more than consumers who, October 15th, early November, those consumers who typically came in early in the AEP, we look at that and say, well, they had their act together. They studied their plan options. They were chomping at the bit. They couldn't wait. They had all their ducks in a row. And then you have that huge spike of enrollment that happens the final week of AEP. And you have a lot of consumers there that might be prompted to shop because time is running out. I don't want to miss the deadline. But maybe they weren't ready to make a move into MA or a specific MA plan. We saw those folks again, 2x the OEP attrition risk. Final week, 2x the OEP attrition risk versus first half. So we look at that and say, it isn't just we want to have outreach and we want to have a plan to keep these members. We might also have to look at when these folks enrolled and treat them differently and maybe put some folks in the top of the queue when it comes to that outreach. I think that was a very interesting point because, that final week of AEP, everyone, depends on that enrollment. That's that huge spike.
Right.
But that huge spike also carries 2x the rapid disenrollment risk.
Yeah, another one of those, intuitively makes a lot of sense, and but but I don't know that a lot of plans really realize that. I definitely didn't, and I think a lot of plans think too that the people that enroll in that last week are the ones who've maybe done the most extensive research and finally after Thanksgiving talk to their alpha children and the whole nine yards, right? And then make that decision in that last week and are completely confident. And that may be true for some, but not the majority, based on the study, which again intuitively makes sense that they felt they put off the decision. They waited till the last week, and then they're not really ready. And maybe they know, hey, I can switch into OEP. I mean, I can tell you, I was as a an independent business owner. I was on the exchange for 4 or 5 years recently, until I finally got you know um, big enough to have a benefits package and everything. But I was on the exchange, and I would do that. I would enroll, when open enrollment period came, knowing I can, and I would switch in, after the first year, and so it right it makes sense. So that definitely is a nugget that's very actionable, right? Understanding who enrolled in that last week, et cetera. So one more nugget, and we're not going to share too many nuggets. There are a lot in this study, but one that's but George, I'll invite you to answer this question. But can you talk about correlations between what a member does during AEP and during OEP?
Right. So we saw any consumers who purchased a new plan in AEP, right? 27% of those consumers made some sort of a change in OEP. Now, half of those are fine. You know, these are right sizing plans where I might be with Johns Hopkins and I might just move from one design to another. You know, that you're saving that member. That member is still with the carrier, the agency, everyone is happy. And then the other 13% of those folks who they made a move in AEP and now they either switch back to an old plan, they switch out, or they're with a whole new carrier. That's the chunk, the 13% that we worry about. And there is some data in that study that suggests how those folks raise their hand, how they generate a lead, if you will. If it's digitally, if it's via television ad, that also can influence their likelihood to attrite in the OEP. But yeah, AEP activity does generally lead to a heightened risk of attrition for consumers in the OEP. And again, it's about 1 out of 8 of those consumers who made a carrier switch in AEP made another carrier switch in OEP.
So based on all this, you know, the findings in this study, and I'll pose this to both of you, but how now as we look ahead at next OEP specifically, right? What if you were sitting in the so George, I'll start with you. If you're sitting in the shoes of someone like Mario, right, or someone who leads Medicare or leads Stars or leads right some critical function like that at a Medicare Advantage plan, kind of knowing what you know now, what are a couple of things that you want to do next year to going into OEP?
Well, a few things that I would think about is, and these are some items that we talked about. Look at when consumers enrolled. Look at through which channel they enrolled. Do my outreach, if I can, in the month of January. Do it sooner for consumers who came in the last week. And possibly do it sooner for folks who came in through a digital channel. I mean, we've seen in other deft research, folks who maybe did not have an agent or a broker assist them and try to make decisions on their own. Sometimes those are consumers that find out that maybe they have buyer's remorse or made a wrong choice. But I would look at all those things. When do folks come in? Through which channel do they come in? Can we push outreach and welcome package sooner? And can we really try to get that first half of January, those outreach calls made, particularly for our last minute enrollees? We saw in that study, half of consumers do have some utilization in January. Prescription drug fill, doctor appointment, etc. And half of those it's in the first half of January. So really, if we think, boy, that first utilization event is when folks can consider, boy, is this the right plan or is it not? We want to try to beat that. We want to have our outreach ahead of them before they have some sort of realization. This wasn't what I thought it was. We want to remind them exactly what they need.
And I think just a real quick tag on to that, but the concept of activation, right? Or I think this whole study validated the importance of that, which is definitely a growing trend, and it's been a trend for a long time for some really savvy plans, but to activate members early on, get that first OTC order filled as soon as they enroll or as soon as they're effective to help them feel vested in the plan, right? And to really activate them from an engagement standpoint. And I think some of what you said just validated that as well. But Mario, what about you? What would be your guidance to plans looking to improve next OEP based on these findings?
Right, and I agree with everything that George said. But I think given that the OEP is there, I think just thinking about OEP helps us to really look at the communications that we are developing for AEP. AEP is all about growth, yes, but you also want to look at how you retain those members through the communications, whether it's on online web-based communications or marketing materials, or training your sales agents, so that those members that you capture during AEP then stay because they understand and they enrolled in the right plan. Um,
Yeah.
and that works. The other thing about OEP, which I think is critical, and as a health plan, I want to continue to look at is what do you learn from what happened during the OEP, because that strengthens your foundation for retention. That's the first kind of clue who leaves and why they left, if they choose to switch, whether you're existing members or especially the new members. So it's that first touch with the beneficiary, whether it's the sales conversation or the marketing materials or that welcome call that gives it is your opportunity really to set the member satisfaction on a solid ground.
And you
So
touched on that plan match fit, right? And I do think that's I've seen other studies that say of the if the likelihood of someone being retained by a health plan is 100%, right? The like 30% of that is purely in the sales experience and the plan match fit, and then there's a portion of it that's like 20-25% is onboarding, 20 to 25% is access to care, and 20 to 25% is when they need to resolve an issue and how effortlessly is the customer service experience, right? But which I love that study, and I think those make sense to me, right? But yeah, 30%, the highest individual percentage of any category is the very initial touch, right? It's were they putting the right plan for them, and yeah, and I think this study had some elements of that as well, right? What did what what did we not ask that we should have? Anything?
Yeah, not that I can really see
Okay.
here. I know you mentioned in pre-production, right? To what degree do consumers know that this event is there,
Yeah.
right? Most of
OEP.
them know it now, right? It was when the reinstitution happened. I think 2/3 of seniors in 2019 had heard of this period, and every year since then, it has built. And now we're up to almost 85% of seniors are aware that there's something that they can do, right or wrong, redo, whatever you want to call it, in that Q1 period. So theoretically, right, as that number gets closer and closer to 100%, it ought to mean that the OEP is going to become more and more and more important because there's greater potential when a full senior body understands that there's this redo period that more seniors do look to redo. So it has built ever since it's come back, and not coincidentally, shopping and switching has built since it has come back.
Definitely. How can plans get a copy of the study, George, if they don't have it yet?
www.deftresearch.com,
Okay.
or reach out to myself or Tim Brousseau. Both of us are on LinkedIn at Deft Research. We'd be happy to work with anybody.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys so much. This was a great conversation. A really really important topic. We just finished OEP, and so it's a timely one too. And love that the study came out and that you guys continuing, I think, to evolve this study into just a really really important piece of your suite of information that you're arming plans with as they try to grow in this super competitive market. So George, thanks for being on. Thanks for talking through this survey. And Mari, thanks for all your insights. Much appreciated. And thanks to our sponsor, Hyperlift. And we will call it a day. So thanks, guys.